So basically, we are going to start with UI and UX design. Uh, let's go to the first line. Look, what do you exactly understand when I say UI and UX? The full form itself clarifies a lot. UI stands for user interface and UX stands for user experience, right? But I'll be like way too simple. I'll just go way too simple. When we talk about UX, right? Now imagine this marker and look, I'm opening this marker, right? Why I'm not rotating it to open it? I'm just like clapping it and clapping down, right? Why? Because user experience is something that's a norm, you can say, that has been set by some designers through a survey around the people around them. Because user experience itself clears that it's based on something user uses or user do, right? And now when I say that this marker itself, when I want to refill the whole marker, there's something written here, turn nozzle to open. Why it's written turn nozzle to open? Because look, when there was the cap, right? I was actually clapping the cap and clapping down the cap. But if I want to fill the, or if I want to refill the marker, there's the instruction given here to rotate it, to have a smooth user flow. Or you can say to have a smooth user process. Because to sell some kind of a product in the market, what's the most important or the crucial part? It's user itself, right? Like if मेरे पास एक product है, for example, this is my marker, अब मुझे sell करना है बाहर जाके, okay? I cannot directly go to user and say buy it. He won't buy it until he needs it, and he won't need it जब तक उसे पता चलेगा ये काम क्या करता है, right? So you have to show it what exactly these markers do, and overall the most important thing is you have to make it usable. You know, until I don't have a necessity, I won't buy a marker. And that's where user experience comes, right? Now comes understanding aesthetics. Aesthetic is nothing but you can just imagine user experience is nothing but three things. The first is creativity, is the part, okay? It's the combination of creativity. The second one is innovation. And the third one is proper principles. Because if there are not proper principles in user experience, or if you're not following the proper principles out there, you're going to actually design some user experience forms. Okay, so basically user experience was coined by a very famous guy out there. And it's a new terminology, okay? It came just like around 10 to 20 years ago. His name was Norman. He also wrote that book, The Thing of Everyday. So this book is actually very famous nowadays because he was the one who coined the user experience, right? And he also wrote that book. So basically, इस book में बोला क्या गया है कि just imagine there's a door, okay? You know those doors जो हम लोग shopping mall में use करते, right? That pull and push one. Many of us have faced problems out there, right? Like many times when we go there and there's nothing written out there, right? Either we push or we pull, right? But we try it out. Many a times it get fails also. Like हम push कर रहे हैं लेकिन वो असली में pull होता है, right? So what will you call that? So basically he termed this kind of a door as Norman door. Norman door basically क्या है जो failure होते हैं. Or you can say is a bad design. If your user has to think twice before using any product, it's a failure, or you can say it's a bad design. That's why nowadays जब door होते हैं उनमें push and pull लिखकर आता है. Why is it? Cause to have a smooth user process or smooth user interpretation. अब बहुत लोगों को यहाँ पर एक misconception जरूर होगा कि user experience term stands for graphical interpretation. No, it's a part of graphical interpretation. Websites or web flow or any kind of user-centric website, there are applications. Yeah, these are the part of graphical interpretation of user experience, but user experience is not limited to this. You know, Amazon Alexa, right? बहुत लोगों के पास होगा भी, right? So basically the Alexa voice out there is a part of user experience, sound user experience, okay? And there are multiple things out there. Even the games you play is a part of user experience. So आप जो भी चीजें ढूंढो, like there are multiple designs out there, right? Like we have product design, we have graphic design, then we have industrial design. But हर चीज में एक चीज common होगा, user experience, because there's no product out there जब कोई तुम्हारे पास यूजर नहीं होता, तो you have to build a strong user base. That's why you have to follow the user experience principles. As said, crafting user-centric experiences. That's what we are learning in user experience design, right? Just imagine you don't have your user in your sense, like you're just creating some kind of a design, and you're creating because you like it. It doesn't matter if you like it. It only matters if your user likes it too. That's why you have to always think about the user and then design something that's useful. Okay, that's why we always say user experience design is all about user-centric design or experiences. Now, when we talk about UI, user experience is a vast field. And in that, UI is a small field, okay? UI stands for user interface. So UI is a part, okay? Now, as I mentioned, UX is not all about digital platforms and digital interpretation, right? But UI is a part of digital interpretation. UX is a built field, right? In that, UI is this much. UI is nothing but the graphical or the graphical interpretation that you make, or the kind of designs you make, for example, on Instagram, right? The overall interface that you have, like on different phones, like we have this Apple iOS system, then we have Android system, right? The interface changes, right? The interface differs. One can easily differentiate between an Apple phone and a Samsung phone, right? Because of the interfaces, right? So these the kind of thing, or whatever visually you can see is user interface. So basically, let me just share my screen again. Okay. So basically, there are 2 or 3 softwares for user interface or user experience design. One is way too famous. You may have heard of it. It's known as Figma. So Figma is nothing but a software that is used for designing user interfaces. Okay. And it's also famous for prototyping and stuff. I'll just share my screen and show you a bit about Figma. So basically, this is Figma. And when I go to a new design file, this is the overall interface of Figma. It's used to design the interfaces out there, like जो भी आप लोगों ने websites देखे बड़े-बड़े. For example, they have these big companies and startups out there, right? Like IoT devices and so many companies that are coming on Shark Tank and all. Now, example, like we have different kind of frames out here. When you actually click on frames, right? So you can see multiple options out here. For example, phone. Then we have multiple options like iPhone 13 mini, iPhone SE. Then we have tablets, desktop, presentation, and so many out there, right? You can also design the watch interfaces out there. For example, we have these companies like Fossil, Apple Watch. Then we have Samsung Watch. All of the interfaces designed on Figma and many other softwares. Another, you can say, alternative Figma is Adobe XD. But nowadays, we don't actually prefer Adobe XD because Figma has the combination of prototyping as well as interface design. Now you'll be thinking, what exactly is prototyping, right? You can say prototyping is basically the animation that you do, not a high fidelity animation. By high fidelity mean, those animation that we see like anime and all, not that kind of an animation, but a high responsive. आप लोगों ने websites देखे, right? Like for example, let me share a quick example with you all. Let's go with Apple, okay? If I just select a product out of here, for example, I'll just go with iPhone 15. Look. So basically, when I scroll the website, right, can you see the interaction or the response? For example, look, when I'm scrolling it upward, the written part here gets away, right? And when I scroll it down, it pops out, and this response, right? It's like a play video. Then we scroll down. Then we have this rotating screen. As much as you scroll down, right, the phone starts scrolling out. It starts turning out in a 180 degree angle, right? That's what we call responsive website. What exactly is responsive website? You can say when you start scrolling or some kind of a website that interacts with your fingertip. Of course, you're going to scroll it using your fingertip, right? So when a website interacts with you, while you are interacting with the website, it's called as a high responsive website. And these kind of a website, like for example, if I'm using Figma, right, and I'm designing a 2D layout of any website, how can I animate the overall website? It depends on the prototyping things, right? Just imagine, I'm a designer, I designed a website, I designed a 2D page, and now I want to just give the overall page to the developer to develop it, code it out, right? But how will the developer know ki kya exactly animation karna hai? Because as a designer, you are the one who's going to decide what kind of a design, response or animation that you're going to perform. So it's on you to showcase the overall animation and responsive thing. We use something like prototyping. Now, if I show you a basic example of prototyping on Figma, let's go with something like a memory animation. So Figma has a great kind of animation stock out there. Among them is the memory animation. That's very useful. Um, in design or in animation field, we also call this matrix. For example, to give you a quick example of prototyping. Now, basically, I have drawn a vector design out here. So basically, we have two kind of formats when you actually go with pictures and any kind of photograph. First is the raster image, and second one is the vector image. Vector image is way too clear. Raster is something that's made out of pixels. जो भी आप लोग के photographs होता है, anything that you use on Photoshop and software, or you have these photos, right? We say na कि we have this pixel like 180 pixels, 2K, 4K. That's basically raster. It's made out of pixel. But vector is not made out of pixel. If you zoom in, like this is a vector, right? If you zoom in, it won't break down into pixels. It's not, right? But instead of this, if I take some kind of a picture, for example, I take this one. Okay, this is a picture. Now, if I zoom in, I just look, it's breaking down, right? It's made out of pixels, right? Tiny pixels out there. Look, it's breaking down. That's what I call raster. So basically, I made a vector, and for websites, we use vector quality images because we don't want to break it down, right? Because website is the first page of your company, right? It's something where you actually showcase everything about your company. It's the portfolio of your company. That's why we cannot risk it out. I'll just make it a quick thing. Now this is a 2D art, right? Now I'll just convert it into an animation. Look how. Now at here we have this prototyping tool, right? You can just go there and directly interact it. Click on navigate to smart animation. Now look, I have converted this art into an animation. You'll see how. Wait, I'll just full screen it and then show you. Restart. When I click here, look. So this is basically prototyping where you actually animate small interaction points, or you can say small buttons out there. For example, the way too famous button out there that we have, that we use on daily basis, that we have in the user interface part of our phones, the switch button. Everything is a part of user experience design. There's no phone, there's no application, there's no software out there without user interface or user experience design. Even this Figma is a part of the user experience. If you notice, the user interface here is way too user friendly or user centric. Everyone can use it. Look, if I say about the icons out there, right? If I say about the icons out there, look, it's way too user friendly. Everyone can use it. Look, if I say about the icons out there, look, it's way too user friendly. Everyone can use it. If I say about the frame, as you can see here, it's pretty user centric, because whenever you see out the interface, overall interface, you can just directly see, yeah, this T is made for text. Here, if I have this pen tool, I can just click it and use it as a pen, because the user interface is damn simple out here. And that's what we focus for. It's not about creating complicated designs out there that looks cool in aesthetic manner, right? But not in the user. It's not user centric, because a user is getting confused or it's complicated for him to use the overall website. This is the common button that you may have seen in your, phones while switching from aeroplane mode or dark mode to light mode, all that kind of thing. So basically, I'll just create a frame of this. Here, this here. Just click here, prototyping tool. Here is my stroke. 1400. Change it to 600. Perfect. Now let's test it out, okay? Look, this is the common button that you have in your Android phones, right? Look, I prototyped it. So basically, this is the prototyping. Look, engineer coded the overall application and interface out on your phone, right? But what's the idea of the designer who made it? And to interpret the overall idea and to convert the static website, or you can say the 2D layout, into some kind of an animation, this is what we call it as prototyping. Perfect. Now we have basically many helping websites out there. Look, Figma is a user interface creating software, right? So there are some limitations. For example, you can create vector designs, but you may have heard that Adobe Illustrator is something that's famous for vectorization, right? Vector designs. But yeah, of course, it got many tools out there because it's a dedicated software for vector design. But yeah, for a normal user interface, Figma's vector is cool. You can always just create something out there on Adobe Illustrator and import it here, because Figma supports SVG file. So SVG file is basically a file format for vector designs. Like if you're creating something on Adobe Illustrator, you can just export the overall thing from there in the format of any vector, and you can just import it on Figma and then again manipulate it. So basically, SVG files can be manipulated. I'll give you an example. I have a great SVG file on my machine. Just a sec. This is a SVG file. Okay, look. So this is not an image file. This is an SVG file. So basically, this is a vector. Look, I can always manipulate it. It was a SVG file. Look, I can always manipulate anything out here. So it's a responsive photo that you can always edit. Okay. So this is the use of SVG files. SVG file is basically nothing but the vector design. Then we will go to the helping websites that we have. Look, as mentioned, Figma has its own limitations in vector design. Same goes with the prototyping tool also. Figma has its own limit in prototyping. For example, वो जो cool gesture वाले movements आते हैं on phone. While using the phone, you just move it like gyroscopic thing, and the internal design or interface interacts with you. That cannot be done on Figma, right? But there are tools where you can use it. So let me introduce you to Protopy. So this is Protopy. It has a very cool feature. You can directly import your 2D designs from Figma to Protopy and then interact or then prototype it. And they have some cool features. Cool feature means absolutely cool. Those kind of effects, we call this parallax effect. You may have seen or heard of it. I'll just give you a quick example. Cosmos.io. It's a very famous website for pictures. It's similar to Pinterest. Look at the overall interaction, okay, when I scroll it. And this has got the parallax effect that I was talking about. Now look, when I scroll, look. It's going with me, right? It's interacting with me, if you can see. So this is parallax effect, where it's redirecting the user to itself. User experience is like a story, and the user experience designer is like the writer out there. Because when a writer writes a book, right, all he writes up is something that he made up, or it is about himself, a biography. But why is it so interesting that the guy who's buying that book is reading it thoroughly, and there are many other people who buys it and make it famous? It's because of three factors, or even more. Maybe it's thrilling, it's mysterious, or it's way too creative, right? Same goes with you. On a website, when you design a website, you basically write about the company, right, or about the client for whom you're making the website. It's kind of portfolio of the company, but write in such a way that the user is interacting with it and understanding the overall thing. It's not like he's just scrolling randomly and he's like, oh, I'm just getting bored. No, it should be like, if it's scrolling down there, it should be like a story. Every part of story is coming out there. Every part of story is popping out there. So this is basically the parallax effect that I was talking about. Look, it's so cool, right? It's interacting with your fingertip again. So you can do this kind of an effect and many more on Protopie. And you can, as mentioned, you can just directly import your 2D design from Figma. There's this cool feature on Figma. Figma has these things like plugins and widgets. Plugin is basically helping tools. Like, for example, if you're inside the Figma, you have this picture, you don't want the background, you can just use this background remover. You have noise, you have 3D textures, and many more. It's from the Figma community. There's a big community out there on Figma that helps you create design. And so that's why Figma is an upper hand. I also have, look, I was talking about the Protopie, right? I'll just search the, Protopie here on the plugin. Protopie, look. Here is the application. You can just directly run it here, connect the accounts, and directly import from Figma to your Protopie. Damn easy. This is what I call user-friendly. You don't have to do a lot of stuff. You don't have to make it complicated. Figma, as a user experience software, made it clear that what exactly is user-centric design. Perfect. Now, the next thing is the design principles. Of course, now you have learned about Figma, softwares to use, yay, whoa, right? But what about the design principles? How you design? There are some certain amounts of principles out there that you have to follow before, going for any kind of a design. They'll help you a lot. I know you'll do great, but still, if you know the principles, it will help you a lot from the very start. Or else all you have to do is again and again explore everything, and it will take years. It's better know the design principles out there. So we have design principles, we have user experience principles. It's a lot fun to watch it. It's not a lot too fun to learn it. User experience is nothing but all about psychology. So you can just think that user experience properties or any principle out there for user experience is related to psychology. Whoever are interested into psychology will love user experience. And do remember, user experience is not about design, okay? It's more than that. The user experience designer, when we design anything, we just go for surveys out there. We just contact 1,500 people to use the same, interface to get our feedback. So always remember, for a user experience designer, feedback and survey are the most important thing. So I'll make it easy for you. So there are these color psychologies you may have heard, right? Red stands for danger, pink stands for softness, blue stands for trust, right? Yellow stands for joy. So while designing a website, for example, if you're designing a website for something like Zomato is a food company, right? So we need something that creates some kind of fuzzy inside your mouth when you hear about the Zomato thing. So they basically use the color psychology of orange and red. In between, somewhere between orange and red, right? Why? Because it's the color psychology. So to make a website even out, you have to know the psychology, or it's useless. If you're just randomly designing some website using some random colors, like for example, I asked you to design a website for a toddler or for a kid, and you're just going for a bright color, for example, red. Makes no sense, right? You have to go for some light color. For example, baby pink, sky blue, or even light blue, right? So here we go with Adobe Color Wheel. I'll just make it easy for you to decide the color palette. But yeah, for even deciding the color palette, you should actually know the color psychology out there, or color psychology behind every color. And that's a part of the design principle. There's a lot. So this is Adobe Color. It's a helping website, a very important website for designers. It will help you a lot. So in design principles, we have multiple color schemes and color psychologies out there. For example, we have analogous color scheme, we have monochromatic color scheme, we have triad, complementary, split complementary, and a lot. If I click on analogous is basically the neighbor colors in the color wheel. May have heard of color wheel in your school times, right? The primary, secondary, tertiary. When we combine it, it forms a color wheel. And when you rotate the color wheel at its full extent, it forms white color. Newton disk, right? We have analogous. Analogous are the neighbor colors. Then we have monochromatic. Monochromatic is basically the dark, and lighter shades, lighter tint, darker shades, or medium tones. You also have these color codes that you can directly copy and use in Figma, as Figma gives you a very great option of, directly pasting the code and using the color. Look, I got the same color I was talking about, right? I directly copied it from the Adobe Color Wheel. And look, I'm also forming a harmonious color, palette out here just by on a click. Like I'm clicking on triad and I want something like for a baby. I'll just go for a print. And look, I got a perfect color palette for a baby. It's a tranquil, or you can say lighter color shades. And I even have the code, so I don't have to pick it out at Figma randomly, right? You just have the perfect code. You can also create your own albums out here for color. You can save it. You can use it later. You have multiple experimental things out here. Perfect. So yeah. So we are done with color wheel. We are done with the prototype. We are done with the color psychology, what we could say, color principles out there, design principles out there. Let me introduce you to some of the design principles that you may know. It's a way to, you can say, random and common in our day-to-day life, even in mathematics, even in engineering, everywhere. Anyone have heard of this color, this design principle known as the golden ratio? Or we have this, so we have this design principle like golden ratio. We have this like third law of third. Then we have, you can say, alignment. Alignment design principle is the most basic one. Even the name conveys the overall meaning of the alignment principle, right? Alignment principle is nothing but align something. For example, if this is a rectangle, right? It's obvious. As a human, I have the common sense. I won't align it like a random thing. No, right? I'll just select deleted. I'll just duplicate it and align it properly in line, right? Look, this is what I call alignment. And this is the principle we follow in our day-to-day life, right? Even in houses, architects, buildings, civil engineering, everywhere. So design is everywhere. It's a factor, right? We have so many design principles. For example, there's a famous design principle used in animation that has been given the name as movement. So movement is basically, give me a sec. This is alignment, right? Even to perform the design principle movement, I have to form the design principle alignment. So that's what I'm saying. Alignment is the most common principle that has been applied on in the day-to-day life. What if I just randomly pick this break and make it red? Isn't it conveying the meaning of movement? Look, in animations, you can just animate the movement that a person is walking like this, right? What about the static? Like, of course, website is a static thing. It's a 2D thing, right? You cannot animate it always. There's some limitations to it, right? Because in India, we have 4G speed. Many part of India also uses 3D speed. Just imagine you have a high responsive website out there. You don't have a great connection and the website fails to load. A bad experience. Just let me know whenever Amazon starts buffering, right? It buffers a lot, right? We'll just go back and just go for Flipkart, right? Why will you go for Amazon? Bad experience, right? Total loss. That's what we are going to avoid. It's something that's also part of the user experience overall, user experience principles out there. Always remember. So for static movement, if I have these tracks, right, let me make one more out here. You can just see here that the track is moving from left to right. It's obvious clear, like you can just see, right? The middle track is red. It's moving. It's kind of giving the, action of moving from left to right. And that's what we need. That's movement. Like in the prior website, when I was scrolling, right, the alphabet was moving, right? Or the colors were moving. I know that was a high responsive website. It's okay because it's a web 3.0 and it's still in the trial phase. It's not an official launch website. You can go there, you can add yourself in the wish list. You can actually use the website. That's the issue. So you have so many principles out there. It's so interesting out there. Whenever you learn, whenever you start using it, right, you just think, oh shit, design was always there with me. It's not like you have to draw something to be a designer. No, that's totally opposite. Drawing is the part of fine arts. Design is the part of creative and critical thinking. A lot critical thinking, okay, and then creative thinking. Making your own decisions, you have right, wrong, so many things. Okay, so just give me a sec. Perfect. So I'll just conclude saying the final PPT. I'll just share my screen again. Perfect. As written, embracing the art of UI and UX design. Look at the highlighted part. UI UX design is all about creativity, empathy, and innovation. Do remember, empathy is the most important part. Because until you're not empathetic, you cannot be a great user experience designer. Because you cannot understand the user itself. You cannot always go with your ego, right? Why should I go and understand that guy? No. Don't be a user experience designer if you're not empathetic. Okay? And innovation is the most important part, and the creativity, of course. There's no bound to creativity. Even in the design principle, the last principle itself says, don't follow the rules, don't follow the principles, create something of your own. But to even create your own part, if even you want to create the new rule out there, you have to follow these principles. So it's kind of a loophole that you have to go with. Until you're not doing this, you cannot do this. Simple. Perfect. Any doubts? Please let me know. Chat. You can just type it in chat. So are you there?
Yeah, I'm there, Nitin. So, if any students has any doubts, they can either unmute themselves right now or they can ask in the chat box regarding UI UX or any other training and internship programs. Yeah, I think we have one question for you, Nitin.
Okay, Inkscape. Look, Inkscape is kind of a software that's used, but is not at its hype. Like, for example, if I talk about the free softwares that we use for creating user experience and user interfaces out there, we'll always suggest you Figma. It's free. It's a great tool. It's the combination of the perfect prototyping and vectorization. What all you need. Inkscape is good. You can use it. You can say as an alternative for Adobe Illustrator, because Adobe Illustrator is a paid software. Okay, but if you're buying it or if you're going with the subscription, you can just go for Adobe Illustrator. Okay, to learn UI UX. So basically, UI is whatever you're going to learn on Figma, Protopy, and all. Okay. Now UX part, right? UX part. The book I suggested. Norman's book. You can just search the term. I'll just write it on this chat. Don Norman. So this guy, he's the one who created the overall UX ka pura loophole. You can always refer his book. Okay, the everyday thing. It's on Amazon. It's a great book. You can just go with that. They'll give you a daily life example. Even if it's daily life example, right? You'll get the basic of user experience and user interface design. And that's what you need, right? To make that mentality of a designer, to make that mentality and to think critically. Okay. Like if you're just using a chair, you'll just be like, okay, is it a good user experience or not? You'll just start thinking, you'll just start observing our things around you. That's what you need. That's a good designer. Can you do a designing? Of course. Look, Figma has two benefits. Okay. Figma is an API based software. Even you can even download it and you can also open it on the browser and directly use it. You can even use Figma on iPads, not even computer. You can just directly use on iPad. There are many friends of mine who use Figma on iPad. Freelancing, it is not okay, coding. No, but at least know the basic HTML and CSS code. Look, for example, I'll just show you something. There's a cool factor out there at Figma. That's way too exciting. Look, if you know the basic HTML code and CSS so that you can actually help the developer out there, like if he's, look, of course, he'll be coding everything. But what if he gets stuck out there? You can at least help him a bit, okay? I'm not saying no coding, but at least the basic. Just share this Figma screen again and I'll show you something exciting, okay? So Figma has the ability to convert any 2D design to CSS code. CSS, right? The decoration part. If I click on this block and I go here at the developer mode, can you see this switch, right? Look, we got the whole CSS code out here for the developer itself. You can also use this. So no need to know HTML and CSS, but you should know the basics. Okay. Designer have scopes in future a lot. Design is at its rising phase right now. Whenever something has those kind of a scope, right, it starts saturating in the market. For example, engineering. When I'm talking about engineering, when I'm talking about medical, the market has been way too saturated, of course, right? And design is a new market out here in India. We have several design colleges out there. Have you heard of NID, NIFT? We have so many degrees going on for design, Bachelor of Design in NID. NID is the top tier college, okay? It's above IIT for design. IIT Bombay also offers design, bachelor's in design, bachelor's in industrial design. After HTML, CSS, React, JS, Figma should be kept to explore, or it's okay to learn more skills as a front-end developer. If you're a front-end developer and if you're a Figma, so it's an upper hand for you, right? Because you can just create your own designs and then you can just go for developing thing. No need to wait for a designer. You can just directly go and communicate with yourself. You can just learn multiple things out there for front-end design, because as a front-end designer or as a designer, let it be anything. You need to be well, aware about the trends going on around you. Then you have these things like the softwares around you, because AI is coming there, dude. Use the AI and be a part of it. What are the do's and don'ts we have to keep in mind while designing? Okay, do's and don'ts. Okay. Never go for any color palette. Okay, as mentioned, color palette is the most important thing, because color palette is something that can actually trigger the emotional, things inside you, emotional intelligence inside you. So do remember, do not play with color palette. Always research a lot. Research is the most important part. Even in UX, you have multiple UX departments. In Google itself, we have this user experience research department. Okay. If you're a user experience designer, it doesn't mean you're just going for design. No, there are user experience research, then user experience prototyping department, then we have design, then we have graphical design department. So many departments. So research is the most important thing. How do much registration got for the course given? You can just ask this to sir. Sir, just answer them how much the registration cost. Because all of the UI UX customer want fully functional website and not only design with basic prototyping. Disha, of course, it's there. But do remember, if you're like, it's only applicable if you're designing something for an individual, okay? And look, even if you're doing everything, if you're a designer, right, all you have to do is hire a developer out there, right? That's all. A developer is cannot do anything without the design itself, right? Design is the most crucial part, because deciding the overall icons. Look, user experience design is not at all about serving anything. It's more about problem solving. If there's a website, Acha, you may have heard, right? Internet Explorer was at its hype. There was a time when it was at its hype, right? But then after that, suddenly Google Chrome acquired the overall, you know, empire of surfing, of internet surfing. Why? It was because of something we call user experience designer. Look, Internet Explorer was totally made from CSS and HTML codes out there. Not exactly proper CSS, okay? But Google Chrome has those aesthetic design, those proper UX, something that a user will love. Just let me know one thing. If you have some kind of a toy, if you have a remote control car, okay, it's working. There's a motor, there's a machine, there's a remote control, there's an antenna. Everything is working properly. But as a chair, look, remote control car is a market. Look, always target your audience. Always search or research about the target audience that you've been targeting. As a remote control car manufacturer, I'll target bachche log, right? Kids, toddlers around 5 to 6 age, or maybe 10. So just let me know, why will a toddler ask for something like just a DC motor that's connected to an antenna remote control? No, right? We have to provide him with that F1 car ka pura frame, or a Mercedes Benz, or a Lambo, right? Design is an important factor. Design targets the most important, in the precise audience. Okay. Okay, now everyone is going to take his or her business online, so there's a lot of scope. Exactly. How can we download certificate after this workshop? Okay. And as we can, okay. So I have a question more. What's the future of UI in this AI revolution? Okay. Look, I don't know about the graphic designers right now, because of course AI is conquering everything. But UX, UI, no. Look, let it be anything. Artificial intelligence will be an artificial thing, okay? And do remember this thing. I keep on saying this thing. Artificial intelligence is something that's bound to prompts, or that's bound to command. It will only give you back what you're asking. But the asking part is yours, right? And you'll only ask after research. If there's a website and if you're asking AI to generate something or to give an idea, you'll give a prompt, what we call the prompt engineering, right? Obvious, right? But it's all about the creativity, the critical thinking, and the research part that you did. And UX is all about research. If you're talking about UI is a part of research. You cannot create a UI until you haven't done a research part, okay? You can just directly play with this stuff out there. It's useless. You cannot call it as user interface or user experience design. It's basically a graphical interpretation that we do on our paper pen. Simple. So can you suggest any course for UI UX? The syllabus of this is difference between interaction design and graphic design. Okay, interaction design, as mentioned, graphic design bends towards more of your drawing ability, your sketching ability, your basic knowledge and foundation of your drawing. When I say about the interaction design, right? Interaction design, the name itself suggests interacting with the user. Just let me know, what if suddenly the do you remember some days ago Instagram suddenly swiped some kind of their buttons, right? Some of their buttons, like the reel button, it moved from some part to some part. I don't remember. I actually don't use that much Insta. At that moment, there were like comments out there why Instagram is doing this. Just a small movement, right? Just a small movement in some kind of an icon. It was there, but there was this shift of the movement. Just because of this movement, there was such a chaos. They have to keep it back there. It's because of the user experience, because they are used to that experience. User experience, even a minute change here, change everything. It's a game changer thing. Do remember. And our company will always hire a user experience designer, because they always need, or they always want a game changer. Or you can say they always need those kind of growth hackers. Difference between it, okay? Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much